Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of What's Up in Archaeology. Today we're going to discuss two hominins which are quite interesting. One of them lived in Africa and Asia, and the other one lived solely in Africa. They more or less lived contemporarily, except in different parts of the planet. And one of them was contemporary with us, Homo sapiens sapiens. How is everyone? I won't be looking too much into the chat for now because I'm still getting things organized. So I'm going to share again how is everyone, and we're going to do this as professionally as I can, and then at the end I'll show you what beer I'm drinking. It's a new beer, and I will not swear. I will definitely not swear. I want to see if this time it is a clean program. So let us share. Before we get started, I will show you the first hominin, which will bring us to the first article, and I will introduce you to him. Even though I've already made a video on him, you can check it out in my videos. He is the Marathon Man video, and we will talk about Homo erectus. But this time, we're going to show you the differences and how Homo erectus has evolved over time. So, before anything, I'm sharing now. Here is the general page from a general description of what Homo erectus was. This is from the Smithsonian Institute. Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. It's a very good site if you want to get a lowdown on hominins and basically science. And we know Homo erectus lived around 2 million years to possibly 143,000 years ago. So he covered quite a big time period, and he lived in basically Africa, and from more or less northwestern Asia, from Georgia, Republic of Georgia, to China and Indonesia. And here is the general description of what he was. He was an early African. He was the second hominin to be classified into the Homo, basically our lineage. He may soon become the first. So stay tuned, because science is re-examining, archaeology and biology, etc., re-examining all our earliest ancestors, because they're more than one, or more or less. And Homo habilis possibly may get a new classification. I will not be that happy, but I will understand it. So let's go on to the article. The links are in the description. Everyone should check them out. Let's get into the first article. I can close this one now. This comes from the blog by Roberto Sainz. He is a anthropologist at the. I know he works at the Atapuerca Museum, I think. Well, he's a Spanish anthropologist, a really good. He's really knowledgeable, and so he's writing in his blog. It's in Spanish, as you can see, but I will make it better. I won't be reading the Spanish because it's in English as well. Here we have two fossil skulls of Homo erectus. one on the left, he came from China, more specifically from a place called Zukudian. When I was studying archaeology in La Trobe University, it was pronounced Chukodian, but now it's been corrected. And the other one on the left, on the right, he comes from Indonesia. Now, take a good look at the two skulls. Yes, one is more complete than the other. And bear in mind, Zukudian, the Chinese example, the one on the left, what you're looking at is a mold that has been recuperated. Original fossils have been lost. They were destroyed during World War II. Somehow they must have been destroyed during World War II. I think they were bound for Europe, and in a ship, and the ship was sunk. But that's not important right now. We have the molds, so we know the archaeologists at the time were intelligent enough to make molds of them, so we know how they looked like. They were plaster molds originally. These possibly are plastic replications of the original plaster molds. So, right, Peking Man, or Zukudian locality 1, which you see here on the right, is Homo erectus. There were 40 individuals located or recovered from locality 1 at the Zukudian cave, which is about 42 kilometers southwest of Peking. Peking Man. The excavation started in 1921, and most of the human fossils appeared between 1928 and 1937. Correct designation of human. They were human. Any hominin that is of the Homo, not genus, species, Homo classification, he is a human. Different, but still a human. In association with it, he was dated between 400 and 600,000 years ago. Relatively close, relatively early, close to us, not that intermediate. In Europe, just to get you guys some context, in Europe, there would have been the ancestor of Neanderthal, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and he is known as Homo ancestor, or as I believe, this is my opinion, and if I'm ever proven right, I will have these videos to show that I was proven right. Homo heidelbergensis, that's who I think the Homo ancestor, which was a descendant of Homo erectus, by the way, that speciated out differently from the eastern Homo erectuses. So, in that cave, they have faunal remains. They had fire evidence at that period, 400 to 600,000 years ago. And I've already said in past programs of these that fire fueled our growing brains, because cooked food, especially cooked meat, is much, much more energetic, gives you much, much more energy than raw meat, and basically meat, and fats, because they are the power packs. If you guys want to know how much power fat has, I suggest you check out, which, let's just remember now, I'll put it in the description. I will Thunderfoot's debunking of this new type of battery that they are supposed to have been invented, and you will see how much energy fat has. and cooked fat is just, cooked fat is just has that energy, but it's easier to digest, and meat, etc. So I will put it in the description. You guys check it out. It is awesome. Now, initially it was designated as Pithecanthropus pekinensis. Sinanthropus is ape man of Peking. That's what it means. Sina, ape, China, Chinese. No, Sina is a simian. Sina, anthropus, ape man of Peking, Pekinensis, of Peking. That's why we call it Peking Man. The assemblage constitutes 1/3 of the fossil record of Homo erectus. Had 5 skull caps, several crania and facial fragments, 11 mandibles, and 147 teeth. Teeth are usually the best preserved material that we, at our bodies or any animal bodies, they're just so hard that takes much. They preserve much better than other materials, other bones, for example, other bones, or even cartilage. Forget it, and skin. Nope. And so that's why they have many more teeth than they have the other materials. The skulls have an average capacity, the brain capacity, of 1,030 cc's. Just to give you guys some some context, modern humans, our average is 1,300, 1,250. It's about that. Similar to Homo ergaster, OH9 Homo ergaster of 1.1 million years, and Sangrinan 17 described below, which I'll tell you, that's basically the one on the right. So Homo erectus brains did not. This is the one on the left is about 400 to 600,000 years ago. The one on the right is more than 1 million years ago old. So the difference between the two, the brain capacity, the brain size, did not evolve that much. But we'll get to see the differences. So the distinctive features of Peking Man are suborbital toruses, less pronounced than the OH9, which is Homo ergaster, 1.9 million years, and Sanguina. What is a suborbital torus, you might ask? It is if you guys can see the cursor, is basically the eye sockets. It makes a sort of innate, like the infinite symbol. That is what it is. It's a torus. The infinite symbol is a torus. It is. Let me make it bigger. Here you go. Suborbital torus is where the eye sockets are, including the top parts and the bottom part. That's what it is, more or less, basically. So it had. I'll be coming up and down of the picture, guys. So bear with me as I pronounce. So it's less pronounced than the one on the left. As you can see, the suborbital torus in this is less pronounced. You can also see it on the side, which is more gracile, smaller than the one on the right. Remember, the one on the left is about between 400 and 600,000 years ago. The one on the right is over 1 million years old. Just so you guys know the time there. Now, he has presence of suborbital sulcus. That one, guy, that even stumped me. Do you know what the suborbital sulcus is? You guys can see the picture. I'll narrow it in, and you guys, it's where my cursor is. That is what the suborbital sulcus is. The supra, oh no, not suborbital, wait. The post-orbital sulcus, sorry. I was thinking about something else. Here, the post-orbital sulcus is this little area here. This little thing. As you can see on the one on the right, it's not there. But the one on the left, it's there. That's what the sulcus is. Right? Difference. Now, it has a sagittal crest. It basically is this part here, the skull, which forms the top. Ours is very not very pronounced. If you put your hand on your head, you will notice the top, right at the top, you will notice it's almost like a ridge. That's what the sagittal crest is. That's where basically your lower jaw muscles are attached to. The bigger it is, the more you force you exert in chewing. It has very angled occipital bone. That is the part behind the skull, the bottom part. It's jagged here, but it's an angled. Compare it to the other one, it's more or less the same. It hasn't changed a lot, but compared to ours, we don't have that. Ours is quite non-pronounced, as the sounds here. So it's not angular, it's round. So it has a thick, flat, and rectangular parietal bone. And what is a parietal bone? Well, it's the parts of the cheekbones, basically. It's hollow because the jaw muscles from the lower jaw pass through it and attach to the sagittal crest. A bit of biology. I gotta stop looking at the chat because I just got distracted. Let's get back to it. It has a wide projected nasal bone. As you can see, the nasal bone is here, where the nose is. It's like a triangular part. The top of it is pronounced forward. It's pushed forward. So their faces would have been slightly pushed forward, much less than ours, but not more than the over 1 million year old sample. We'll get to that in a second. Now it has a robust mandible with a high corpus. The high corpus means that it was thick, and it's robust means it was thick. The dentation, small teeth. In relation to Homo species, they were smaller than ours. Actually, their teeth were smaller than ours. So, no, I correct myself. They were smaller than Homo habilis, the older Homo specimens, and that even includes Sanjiran 17. And the large occipital torus across the full width of the skull. Again, the occipital torus is the top, the brow ridges, basically. Complicated something. The brow ridges is what the occipital torus is. But it also includes the eye. So they were large, and they were wider than the skull, in fact. Well, they covered the whole skull. Now, we know that this amazing fossil assemblage disappeared during World War II. Only 2 original teeth are preserved, but also very high quality replicas, like I said, which had been reconstructed by the German anatomist Franz Weidenreich. After the war, more fossils were found there until 1966. A few teeth and several cranial and post-cranial fragments. Later, Gary Sawyer and Ian Tattersall. I know Ian Tattersall. He was he was on my reading list when I was doing studying archaeology. I think I may have remembered Sawyer, but I know I remember Ian Tattersall. Did a more updated reconstructions of 3 Pithecanthropus cranium from various fossil fragments, which this is it. They were able to create this specimen. The darker brown are the bones, the bones that they actually found. The lighter ones are the reconstructions. That's how you reconstruct any material. I've done that with 2 ceramic bowls in one of my training courses, which I had here in Portugal. Now we're going to talk about the one on the right, Sanjiran 17, and he's Java Man. So the story of Java Man is after the hit of Homo neanderthalensis. Wrong, it's Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, but this is 1964, so I will Forgive them a little bit for this. The Dutch physician Eugene Dubois undertook a journey to Asia with the aim of finding a desired missing link, because they supposedly found the missing link, quote unquote, which is not. We are the missing link. We are continuously evolving. We are a transitional species, by the way, guys. We are transitioning to a future hominin. So that's how it works. That's what creationists can't get, or anyone that denies biology, basically. That, oh, why are there monkeys if monkeys evolved? No, monkeys did not evolve into us, firstly. And whereas the missing link, there are no missing links, because all the fossils we find are the missing links. Go to a modern cemetery now, you will find missing links, etc., etc. Just to get cleared up a bit. So he journeyed to Asia. Indonesia, in that time, belonged to the Dutch until World War II. So he went to Batavia, which is now Jakarta, and started there. He tried to find the missing link between apes and humans. He thought tropical jungles. They knew that the orangutan was there, etc., etc. So, oh, look, we can find something there. And that's how he went there. In parallel, a military mission he enrolled, so he got the military because of the natives, possibly. It would also be the first hominin find outside of Europe, which it was. It was even hominins were found in Europe much, much earlier than they were found in Africa, Asia, etc. So Europe was, and so yeah, he succeeded and found Trinil 2 in 1891, a very thick partial skull with a brain capacity of 940 cc's. So compared to this one, these two had about 1 liter, and the one which he found was 940 cc's, very, very close to a liter. The difference is, I can't do maths, but it's small. Even I can say it's small. Initially, he defined it as Pithecanthropus erectus, and nicknamed him Jarvis. We got the erectus part. Pithecanthropus. I'm not very good at Latin, so I always forget what Pithecanthropus means. Walking upright man or something or other. I assume I can't remember, guys. I'm sorry, and someone will correct me in the comment section, etc. And I will even look it up, but I forget some names and crap. But that's not important. But it was dated to about 1 million years ago. 1 million years. The date after he found the pathological femur, Trinil 3. 80 years after, Java Man got a face with the findings of Sangrinan 17 skull, which had a capacity of 1 liter, 1.04 cc. So he found partial skull. A year later, he found the femur, and then 80 years later, they got the face. So this is the Sangrinan 17, but until this skull was found, it was basically a small mosaic, partial skull, or partial, the top part anyway. Then he got the face 80 years later with the femur in between. The femur is the biggest bone you have in your body, the leg bone, just so you guys know. So what are the key features of Java Man? Well, he has a low cranial vault, longer than Sinanthropus. What does that mean? It means his brain cavity, brain case, is lower and pushed back slightly, more than the Zucudian Peking Man. Remember, these are two of the same species. These are Homo erectus, one separated by about 400 to 600,000 years. So in that time, the brain capacity grew from 1004, as you can see here. Where is it? 1004 cc to 1030 cc in that time. I apologize for going up and down, but it has to be done. Has to be done because the thing. Anyway, let's get back because I'm below. Won't have time to do the other one. He has huge suborbital toruses, means the eyebrows, they're bigger, much thicker than the Peking Man. He has very flat forehead, and you can see it's flatter, while the Peking Man is becoming more pronounced, more forward, becoming forward. While this one is still very early hominin type, which was the brain pushed back, so we had a face, flat face, but forward, pushed forward the face. As it evolved, the face came into the skull, and the brain became round. The brain case started to become rounder. That's why what it means. He also had a sagittal crest. The maximum width of the cranial base, I don't know what this maximum width means. The cranial base was the widest any hominin got, maybe. Had flat cheekbones, but large zygomaxillar tuberosity. That means the bones of the cheek were much, much thicker compared to later specimens. I think that's what it means. He had big rounded inferior orbital rim. That's the back part of the skull, the bottom part of the skull, which was more rounded, more closer to Homo habilis and the other Australopithecines and our initial ancestor, etc. It had a lack of demarcation between the nasal region and the lower face. Basically, it had a very, very flat face. And the orbital or occipital torus and the brow ridges, brows over ridge where it is over here, the brows, it's just one big bar, basically, continuous instead of that dip. So, interestingly, very few lithic Acheulean tools, the bifaces, have been found associated with Homo erectus in Java. That's not really surprising, because there's not a lot of. They may not have found them, or we don't know yet. In general, much less frequent than in Africa. Africa has a lot of stones. They may have had a different type of diet. There's no big game in Java where it was found. There would have been smaller animals, etc. So that's me now asserting what I believe could have. This is my opinion. They might not have needed the Acheulean tools because they did not have the big game that was available in Africa or even in Asia. So yeah, were they more used to other tools such as choppers and flakes? We don't know. Did they use organic materials instead, bone, wood bone, or shells? Possibly. It takes a hell of a lot of effort to make a bone tool where you can make a flake and make a bone or a wooden spear, for example, or even sharpen it over the fire. You can make with a small scrape or something. You can make a very sharp spear just by heat tempering it. You hit the point, you scratch it, hit the point, scratch it until you get a point that you want. You make a really hardened spear out of just wood. So yeah. So but in contrast, they use shells of freshwater mussels as the base of an engraving, and was published in 2014. A team of researchers discovered an engraved geometrical zigzag pattern in one of the hundreds of fossil shells from the Dubois collection. This is part of material excavated from Trinil by Dubois, the end of the 19th century, which were waiting to be studied by the by 1 century by Naturalis Biodiversity Center in Leiden. And you can see here the picture. So Homo erectus practiced art. That's all you can conclude. This is art. So yeah, go on to the next one. And we go over to Africa. I've talked about naledi before. Homo naledi was a new hominin found a couple of years back, 2 years back, I think. In fact, this year, in summer and early autumn, John Hawkes led a team to excavate. John Hawkes is an anthropologist from America. I can't remember where he's from. Also, Lee Berger from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, Johannesburg. Witwatersrand. He led an excavation. John Hawkes, he led from which university? Here, and where they discovered a lot of the new bones, both in the naledi chamber and the other chamber, which I can't remember the name, but it's in the caves, the Rising Star cave system in southern South Africa. So let's begin. This is by Colin Burris, and I read this, and his writing is we shall see. So it's a cave that keeps on giving, almost 4 years. So I learnt about it last year, or this year basically, but they've been excavating since 4 years ago, as it should be. Researchers discovered 1,500 ancient human bones and teeth from a rocky chamber in South Africa's Rising Star cave system, naledi chamber. You drop in from the cave, then there's a narrow passage to a first big chamber. Then there's another narrow chamber to the naledi chamber. I can't remember the first one, but then I think it's Denaldi, possibly. Naledi and Denaldi, I get too confused, but that's just me because I'm a moron. Those two chambers have yielded about 1,500 ancient human bones and teeth. The team then have discovered in this excavation, latest one, 130 additional hominin bones and teeth from the second chamber in Rising Star. As I said, there were 2 chambers in that cave system. They said the discoveries and the first official confirmation of the specimen's age have the potential to transform our understanding of how and where the first humans evolved. Yes and no. I will get to that in a little bit. Researchers investigating humanity's deep evolutionary roots. By the way, just spoilers. They are not our ancestors, but they evolved from one of our ancestors. And I'll say it here right now. Which we shall get. But again, share the picture. Some of the features he has. He has. If you saw a lot of Homo erectus inspired features, the suborbital torus, the occipital torus, is very pronounced, wide as his face. He has not as pronounced post-orbital sulcus. His skull, his forehead is rounded, slightly rounded, still flat, but it's slightly rounded like Peking Man, if you guys remember. His teeth are small. From what I can see here, his face was protruding forward, but his mandible is not that big, so it's not robust. It is more gracile, meaning more delicate. His teeth are relatively small, so he was not a vegetarian or primarily vegetarian. He would have been a omnivore. From what I see here, the teeth are worn a bit. The incisors, which let's see, which is about here, if you guys can see. This where I have my cursor, that's the incisors. No, that's the incisors, because they're the premolars, molars. No, where I was it right? The incisors have seemed to be worn down. That's not uncommon. That is diet related, and I have an article which I may do in the future on what they ate and how they ate. So stay tuned. Anyway. It wasn't just the sheer number of material that was significant. Berger's team, Lee Berger from the university, as I said, Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I can do my South African accent if I say this. Lee Berger from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, and his colleague pulled hundreds of bones from the naledi chamber in Rising Star. I apologize. I shouldn't muck around. Let's get back to seriousness. The news finds in the Star chamber, the Lasedi chamber, as opposed to the naledi chamber. But before that, they found the body is short-bodied, had hands and feet like modern humans, so they were basically smaller versions of us. The brain size was half of ours. The pelvis and shoulders were more like those of Australopithecus. And the team named it Homo naledi in 2015. See, that was 2 years ago when I first discovered, when I first remembered it. Got to know them. Judging from the size of the bones, neon, this sample, this fossil was called Neo. Whatever. He stood about 1.4 meters tall, weighed about 40 kilograms, says William Jungas from Stony Brook University in New York. It's quite a good university, that. I don't know how much. Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble, so I won't say much about that. Who wasn't involved in the work. Homo naledi was smaller than the original proposed. So they found that, and they thought he was about 1.5 meters, 1.6, but he's smaller. But could be also the female, male. We don't know yet. But he did have a small brain, though. Perhaps the most significance, for the first time the team were able to has worked out how old the lady was. That they found in they've managed to date him, and which at the start proved difficult because the fossils were found in loose sediment rock. Loose sediments rather than rock. It's easier to date rock than sediments. So they used sort of a semi-indirect dating method where careful isotope analysis of the sediments and the remains of the solid limestone layers that formed after naledi material was added to the cave. So they used basically stratigraphy. A geologist would tell you what stratigraphy means. It's basically pages of a book. The lower level ones are older than the top ones. Basic physicist. You put a one pancake that you make, as an analogy, the first pancake will be always older than the last pancake that you make in the stack, because it's on top. So I hope you like that analogy. So when they managed to, the fossils, the limestone layers, materials out of the cave suggested the fossils were between 230,000 and 415,000 years old. But isotope analysis of the material taken from the three Homo naledi teeth helped narrow down the range even further. And Homo naledi bones in the naledi, the cave, the naledi chamber, are between 236,000 and 335,000 years old. That is very, very significant. Very, very significant. This is a near universal agreement that the age range is significant. Like I said, it basically puts naledi, Homo naledi, in South African landscape not long before, well, not long before, here it says not long before our species, modern humans, had emerged, begun to emerge elsewhere in Africa. But we know from Morocco that they have dated the oldest member of our modern human lineage. He's, I would say, I would consider that specimen from Morocco. I can't remember the name, the where they found it. Crap at names. It was dated between 280 and 350,000 years ago. So the lady was contemporary with our first members of our species. That's why it's significant. But their brains were much smaller. They were smaller than us, and then they were thought to have vanished from the continent. So this was long after Homo habilis, Australopithecine afarensis, and Lucy. Australopithecine afarensis Lucy, and Australopithecine africanus was the equivalent of Lucy in South Africa. So Homo naledi was about their size and weight and so on, except he had features that were very, very, very modern. The age of the naledi material also falls in a time period with a generally poor hominin fossil record. Yes, we know in Africa that there was us, possibly Homo erectus, or Homo ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis, maybe just 2 or 3 hominin species. And he was a surprise. So what makes this species especially fascinating is that Homo naledi is more different from modern humans than Neanderthals. That is an understatement of the year. That's like saying that the modern cat is more different from lions than it is to the what's that species of cat? The caracal. It's the ancient Egyptians mummified a lot of them. They are the ancestor of the modern domesticated cats. So that's what of course they are different. Other species with which modern humans coexisted, yeah, but Neanderthals were our cousin species. They were basically a race of humans that our race, that's what race means. The differences between Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens sapiens, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens sapiens is negligible and enough to produce viable offsprings. Modern humans could never mate with Homo naledi, ever. Not even our ancestor Homo heidelbergensis could mate with Homo naledi and produce a viable offspring. So this is why I don't agree a lot with this article. Says Fred Spoor, who from the University College London. If Fred ever sees this video, he will be angry with me, but I don't care because I know I'm right. Sorry. The age of Homo naledi material falls in the time period, which is, yeah, I said that. There are several hominin apparently coexisted in Africa for more than 2 million years. Yes, they did. And the species seem to have coexisted across Eurasia 100,000 years ago. We know Homo sapiens sapiens, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens denisovian. And there's even a fourth one which we don't know enough about. But the diversity between 236,000 and 335 years ago to Carol Ward from the University of Missouri in Columbia, that's exciting. Understatement. Bernard Wood at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. is not surprised by the age. I think he's lying, but that's just me. That's my opinion, and I will stick to it. That's my opinion. because I was surprised when they published when they initially published the age. I thought they were much older, and so did nearly everyone. So, and I've been keeping up with this article, these discoveries. So just months after the first Homo naledi papers were published, he bet a colleague that the species would turn out to be less than 500,000 years. I got to click on this. Sorry about that, guys. I got to click on this if he has anything written down, because I've written down in Twitter and in elsewhere in videos I've made all my whatever I say. So April 2016. No, that's after. I'm sorry. 2015 when they were published. Where is it? Where's this quote? Nothing there. Let's see. My sense is much easier. Here we go. My sense is that much the same as can be said. I have not insignificant bet with a colleague that the remains of Saint Homo naledi are less than 500,000 years old. My best guess is I stand corrected. I stand corrected. Well done, sir. Yes, I stand corrected. Well done, Bernard Wood. I did not know, and awesome insight. Yes, I stand corrected. I have been this is proof. He did make a bet, and yes, well done, sir. I can't. Let's continue. I could have corrected myself anyway. Wood thinks the full evolutionary analysis might conclude that that those modern hands and feet of Homo naledi branched off from other human relatives relatively recently, or not. If its primitive features might be misleading. Okay. He says this would mean it originated recently and then evolved to look more primitive due to isolation. When I was learning about biology in high school, year 9, if I can remember, we talked about how isolation caused speciation. We have the example in today that in Ireland there is a finch that is evolving because of two different type of finches, which are relatedly close enough related that they produce viable offspring, have begun by somehow mating, and they are producing a totally different species of finch. But that's on an island. We are talking about Africa. And Africa, there are no real great barriers, some rivers, yes, no significant mountain ranges to warrant such an isolation of a species, especially in South Africa, that they would be isolated and evolve differently. I would be more convinced in the Rift Valley, northeastern Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, etc., where they could have had speciation due to really significant isolation. You have the Sahara Desert. You have really big mountain ranges in that area, volcanoes, etc., that form chains of volcanoes in valleys, etc. So there I'd be a little bit more convinced, but not in Southern Africa. I am still a bit skeptical about this. Now, for instance, Southern Africa might have been relatively lost. No, I don't think so. Wood and H. Says Wood. Naledi's lineage might have had comparatively little competition with other humans. Yes, possibly. Can't argue against that. This could have relaxed the pressure of to grow and maintain a large brain. Well, a large brain seems to have been a byproduct of fire usage, basically. So maybe they didn't have fire. That's a possibility. As I said before, in Homo erectus, they had fire 500,000 years ago, and in Peking, the Peking Man, and their brains grew. And so we know that Homo erectus used fire at least 500,000 years ago, more or less. So that could be a possibility. What else? The others reasons show that Homo naledi is generally a early human, but others are reasonably sure. No, the age says it's not a early human. It's a branch of humans, that a dead end branch, like Neanderthalensis, like Denisovans, and one day even us. It could even be that the most primitive early Homo species we've ever discovered. Yes, Berger says. It might have had its origins long before 2 million years ago. Exactly. We only know the ages of those specimens that were found in the Lone Star Cave in South Africa. If we find other examples of Homo naledi elsewhere, older, for example, we can then find the sequence. So yes, possibly, yeah, exactly. He thinks this could flip Wood's model on its head. Rather than seeing southern Africa as an isolated evolutionary cul-de-sac, perhaps it was actually a powerhouse of human evolution, the region where many human species, potentially including our species, first appeared. Well, we know that the oldest so far Homo sapiens sapiens is in the north, in Morocco. So, but Homo sapiens sapiens and his direct ancestor occupied most certainly all of Africa before he left Africa. So yeah, then this new way of thinking might have profound implications, of course. For instance, Homo naledi's odd mix of features, some strikingly modern-looking hands and feet, etc., and some more ancient hint at an emergence of a recognizable modern human anatomy that is far more complicated than originally thought. And that idea that Homo naledi might have survived the crucial human evolution for 2 million years might put the rest of the idea that competition between human lineage drove the universal march for larger and larger brains. Meat, eating cooked meat especially, yes. And that's just a tale to, but it was just a tale, and it's ended now. So yeah, basically the rest of it just a few other things and the links to the actual study. These are the bones that they have found. So basically, Homo naledi, in my opinion, I hope they do find older samples of this species to prove that they were a unique species that evolved by themselves along with our direct ancestors. Firstly, Homo erectus, then Homo, as I said, heidelbergensis, or Homo ancestor, and then modern humans in Africa and in Europe, Eurasia, ancestor again, Homo heidelbergensis, to Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, Homo sapiens denisovan. So this will end it here for my stream. I will stop sharing and say thank you for all the people that have been watching this stream, and Davey, Len Nuggets. Oh, how are you, man? First time you've been here. Carlos David, always a pleasure. Beach Price, the same. Warped Reflection, Sweetie, always a pleasure to have you here. Whoever, I hope I haven't missed anyone. I will say to everyone, even those that I've missed, thank you for coming on, and I hope I wasn't too boring, and see you in the next stream. So thank you and good night.